Hi, I'm Dr. Greg Chappell, Chappell Chiropractic Wellness Center. Welcome back. In this segment, I'd like to talk a little bit about nutritional aspects of the pregnant female and also of the developing baby. And the one thing we hear a lot about is folic acid and calcium, possibly vitamin D and the B vitamins. But the one thing that studies show that a lot of females, particularly, I think studies show about 2/3 of all females have a lack of understanding because they've never been told by their doctor how important the essential fatty acids are, particularly the omega-3s and particularly DHA. Okay, there's also EPA in there and you want to get a balance, but the DHA is vitally important for brain function and development. About 60% of the nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, what's called the myelin sheaths that go over the nerves to help protect them and transmit the signals. It's all fat, and so you got to be putting good fats in there. And in the typical American diet, we get a lot of omega-6s and 9s, but we really don't get enough omega-3s. Now, omega-3s you can get from plant sources, but the body does better with an actual animal source, which would come from fish. And the problem with eating a lot of fish nowadays is that because of the mercury and the dioxins and the PCBs and so forth, there's so much junk in the water that a lot of the fish are getting it into their fat, and then we get it into our systems when we eat the fish. So there are recommendations on how to limit the amount of actual fish that you're consuming. And you want that to be deep water fish like cod, tuna, those kinds of things. Tuna you really need to keep an eye on. And we'll talk about that in another segment. We'll get into the recommendations on that. But basically what I wanted to talk to you about today is that when it's best to actually supplement with it. And you got to watch the supplements. You want to make sure they're molecularly distilled so that any of that toxins that have gotten into the fat of the fish and it's extracted and expelled out, you want to make sure that that's distilled out of it so that it doesn't carry through in the supplement. So you make sure you get a good high quality. Just don't go to the supermarket or to one of the big box stores and buy your omega-3s and hope for the best. You really want to get a good quality. So make sure that they are have the toxins taken out. Okay. So basically, why are they so important? Because with the developing brain, about 70 to 80% of all the energy from nutrients during pregnancy that the mother consumes go towards brain development. So it's a huge process going on at that time, particularly during the last trimester. There's a huge draw from the female into the baby. And if that's not replaced or the stores aren't built up early enough to feed the baby and keep the mother healthy, what will happen is it pulls out of the mother into the baby, and the mother can then go into depression, and that can last up to a year after she delivers. And then if we back up another delivery after that, another pregnancy, what it does, it keeps depleting it, and you can get further and further down the line. It's kind of a downward spiral. So it's actually best if you are planning on getting pregnant, really start to supplement with omega-3s and make sure there's a good quantity of the DHAs in there so that you can build up your stores so when you do get pregnant, you and the baby can have a healthy outcome from that. So start early. If you haven't started, you're already pregnant, just start as early as you can. The importance of it is not only reducing depression for the female, but it also helps to increase gestation time, so there's less chance of premature births, which have lowered birth weights and so forth, which is not good, and it also decreases the possibility of developmental problems with the child. So that's up till birth. Okay. Then we want to take a look at breastfeeding. After birth, you want to keep doing that because you want to keep feeding the baby's brain for up to. Ideally, they say that if you can try to breastfeed up to 2 to 3 years is really ideal because it improves cognitive function, helps with visual acuity. It just helps the overall function of the brain for the child, and also in the early phases, it helps with the healing process and the reproductive organs of the female. Now, what you want to do is look at this early stages of the baby's development after birth. Is that basically they are developed for about the first 3 years. They're forming billions of cells in the brain. They form trillions of neural connections in there, and they say that there's about twice the amount of neural connections in a young child in the first 3 years than there is in an adult. So what happens during that time, you're developing all these potential connections for relating and to our environment and developing our behavior patterns and so forth. So as we create that possibility and that potential during the first 10 years, you want to make sure these kids are exposed to a wide variety of types of things, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also to different creative avenues, and give them a broad spectrum, because that stimulates all these connections. And the more and more that we use them, the more and more we keep those, and they facilitate us through the rest of our lives. Because after the first 10 years, in our second decade, from about 10 to 20, we start to go through a process called pruning. And that what the brain starts to do is that those connections that haven't been used and stimulated or challenged in some way are now are pruned off or cleaved off, and we lose them. So, and once you lose them, it's really difficult to regain them at that point. So make sure you got plenty of omega-3 fatty acids to help with the brain development, and give them the challenges and the stimulation and the outlets to really stimulate their brains early on, and you'll have a really healthy, happy child, and much smarter and so forth, and progress better in life. Now, recommendations on omega-3s. World Health Organization has kind of a bare bones recommendation of 200 milligrams a day. Most of your other global references go up to start at about 300 and go up from there. So 300 to 500 is pretty common. And so the CDC says that the vast majority of people that they've surveyed, or females that are pregnant, are basically about 0 to 100 milligrams. So they're really deplete. They're just not getting enough at all. So get any questions, give me a call. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully this has helped, and looking for your health, your vitality during the process, and seeing this child come out as a healthy, happy child. Okay, thanks for joining me.